I want to use as our text this morning the passage in Ephesians chapter 4. Last week we used really John 14:6 in our study of pluralism. Ever since Jesus said that there are any other ways or lives or truths outside of me, I'm it and I'm the only one, then pluralism has had its foundation pulled out from underneath itself.
Amen.
And in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 to 6, I think we have yet another of many passages which underscores the importance, because it emphasizes it, of oneness or of unity. Now, in our study in Christian ethics of the isms of American society, the philosophies and worldviews that are held by many people in American society today, we have, for the most part, with the exception of the leading one, the umbrella one, secularism, spent just one study on it. One study on skepticism, one on hedonism, and so forth. I'm going to make an exception to that practice this morning by looking at pluralism again, only one more time, because I think, with the exception of secularism, which is the one that somehow holds them all together, none of them are any more important or more dominant than pluralism is today. And as soon as you get in any area of religious discussion, you find out that unlike what was true in some times past, pluralism is the dominant spirit.
Amen.
As we've seen, pluralism is the belief that we can have a plurality of conflicting opinions because every man is entitled to his own. That we can have a plurality of conflicting opinions because every man is entitled to his own. And it often goes under that little catchy phrase, every man is entitled to his own opinion. Every man is entitled to his own opinion. When it comes to reading the Bible and sharing that with someone, then it often comes under this little phrase, well, that's your interpretation. With the implication being, that's yours. If that suits your needs, if it feeds your spirit, if it speaks to your soul, if it helps you out in your life, that's fine. That's your interpretation. I happen to have a different one. People generally don't want to get right down to the nuts and bolts of things and ask themselves and ask you in that discussion, well, that is your interpretation and here's mine, so let's find out who's right. They never do that.
Amen.
It's always, that's your interpretation, and I don't want to bother you. I'm going to leave you alone. Your interpretations don't affect me. I'm not concerned about that, as long as you'll grant me the same immunity. As long as you'll leave me alone with my interpretations of that passage or with my opinions of this in religious areas or matters, then I will leave you alone. They don't want to say, that's yours, here's mine, let's find out what God's is. Because obviously you'd be throwing out pluralism in your life to say, there's yours, here's mine, let's seek after the Lord's now. To find out whether he agrees with one or the other of us or neither of us. He won't agree with both. Not if both of the things we have to be saying are contradicting themselves. And, it's just a standard part of common sense that you can't have valid conflicting opinions. You just can't have that. You can't have valid conflicting opinions about truth. Now, you can have conflicting opinions that are valid about things that are open to opinions, such as, well, how do you like today? Well, there's any opinion under the sun that would be a valid opinion. You can say, I do like it, that's valid. I mean, valid in the sense that it's true. You can say, I don't like today. Now, it'd be best to like today since the Lord has made every day, but we're asking after its validity, and validity asks after its truth. Is that true? Is that true? Well, sure it's true. You're just saying, I don't like today. You're not saying today is a bad day. That'd be another matter. You're saying, I don't like today. Well, that's fine. Or I don't like this color, or I do like that color, or whatever. That's fine. But when you get in the area of mathematics, try this pluralism on one of your teachers in school. That business of 84 divided by 2017 equals, that's your opinion. I like the answer that I gave. Try that pluralism in an area like that. Oh no, they won't allow it then, will they? Try it in geometry. She says draw a triangle and you put 9 sides on it. It's like, well, now, wait a minute, that's my opinion. Every man's entitled to his own opinion. All of a sudden, when you get to something like that, you're not entitled to your own opinion, are you? Are you? What are you entitled to? Your teacher will tell you the truth. You're entitled to being right, and that's all you're entitled to. You're not entitled to anything else but being right. Here's another way you can think about it, just another angle you can approach it from. Some people who are in theology have been in mathematics as well. I know of one who has a doctorate degree in theology who has a Harvard PhD in mathematics. And one thing it's helped him do, he's non-charismatic, but I've met him and talked with him before and sat at a table and eaten with him before, and he's very open to it. One thing, however, that mathematics has done for him and his theology is help him to realize that pluralism is wrong, that you cannot have all these various opinions. When we're talking about truth, not when we're talking about opinions of shades of color or something, or what do you like to do, you can't have an absolute answer there. When it comes to truth, and nothing is more precise than religious truth. I mean, it's above mathematical truth or geometric truth. Then there can only be one right answer. There can only be one opinion that's allowed. You have a little more leeway when you come to maybe sociology or history or something, but after all, your teacher says, now I want you to give me the date of the founding of this country, and you say, well, 1884, that'll be marked off then. And you go ahead and tell her, but that's my opinion. This country has taught me, and you people teach me here in religion in this school anyway, that I'm entitled to my own opinion. They'll say, well, you are entitled to your own opinion, but not when it comes to truth, though. Not when it comes to when there's an answer to something versus something else. They'll say, no, you're entitled to one thing, and that is to give me the right answer. I can't think of any other way. And this is why some people in theology have studied mathematics and geometry, because it teaches you that there is order in the universe. There is design in the universe. And with purpose, there is order and design. I can't think of any other way to make a triangle, for instance, since we're talking about mathematics and geometry, than to draw an enclosed area with 3 sides. I mean, there are all different types of triangles. You can have triangles with a right degree with a 90-degree angle. You can have triangles where equilateral triangles where all of the angles in the triangle are equal. You can have obtuse triangles where one of the angles is greater than 90% or 90 degrees. But you can't have a triangle that fails to have 3 sides. See, that's the criteria of triangleness. If we ask ourselves, define triangle. See, in mathematics, it's certain there. The same as with squares or anything else, but you can have all different types and sizes. There's a triangle, and there's a triangle, and there's a triangle. You have all different types of triangles, but what's the essence of triangleness? 3 sides. It has to have 3 sides. It can't have less than that, it can't have more than that. It might be your opinion that it has more, but your opinion will be dead wrong, though. It might be your opinion, but your opinion is insane. That's the whole problem with opinions when they don't line up with the facts as we know them. It's insanity. You can say all you want to, my opinion is triangles have 4 sides, or my opinion is triangles have 2 sides, and you'll be wrong, though. I think a lot of times about the area of mathematics and geometry, the so-called precise sciences, that they are precise. It's not just one sociologist's interpretation of why the urban poor are poor, or why they're urban, versus another's. There's an answer in mathematics. There is an answer. You find out whenever you see all those red marks on your paper, there's an answer in mathematics, and there's only one answer for the most part, unless it's an ambiguous question. There's only one answer. And if someone gave you, they said, give me the essence of triangleness, or they gave it to you another way, I want you to make a triangle, but I want you to violate its basic principle of being 3-sided. I want you to make one. That's a good day's activity. If your child doesn't have anything to do one day, give them that as an activity. make a triangle that violates its essence. That is, that denies the principle of three-sidedness. And I've sat and done that when I didn't have anything else to do. I sat and thought, how can I get it to be a triangle and not have three sides on there? And you can do this. Right there we've got three sides, but only got two angles though. And as soon as I try to give myself a third angle, there's my three angles, now I have four sides. I can't think, and you just can do it backwards and crisscross the lines and put them together. Triangle, I've got to have three sides, but I've got to have triangles though. I've got to have three angles with three sides. Now you can make many angles and fewer sides, or many sides and fewer angles, but you can't end up with three angles and three sides except according to the essence, the ousia, the theologians would say, the ousia of triangleness. What is it that makes a triangle a triangle? It's three sides which equal three angles, three connecting sides, that is. A polygon that has three sides is maybe the more technical definition. Well, the same thing is true in religious matters. It's just too bad that people don't understand Scripture as being religious truth, as being as precise and as correct and as purposeful and meaningful as they do mathematics and geometry. They feel that you can give them a test on spiritual matters or religious ideas or biblical principles, and they could put down almost any answer they wanted to put down, and you couldn't fault them for it. You couldn't count off. You couldn't check it off and say wrong. And say, well, I'm entitled to my own opinion. Well, this is my opinion. Well, that was Israel's Old Testament mistake, thinking that she could approach God with her own opinions. If I remember correctly, there was a case where Aaron, and he was later followed by one of the kings, Jeroboam, who decided to make golden calves and represent Yahweh via the calves. God said no. Every time one of the kings sinned later, who came after Jeroboam, their sins are always recorded in the book of Kings under this designation: he sinned after the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. His sins were so bad, thinking that he could approach God with his own opinions like, well, I'm still worshiping God. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still worshiping God, but I'm worshiping him a different way than the people down in Judah are, Rehoboam and his followers down in Judah. What they're doing is they're worshiping God through the temple, which was God ordained. We're worshiping the same God, but there are different avenues to God. No, there aren't different avenues. If there's one God, there's only one way to him. Jesus told us that himself in John 14:6. If there's one God, there's one way. If there's one God, there's one way, then there's one truth. Then there's one faith, then there's one church, then there's one spirit, then there's one calling. Then everything is one. You see, the essence of God, which is oneness in purpose and in spirit, the essence of God dictates everything else in the spiritual realm that relates itself to him. God is one. Deuteronomy 6:4. Therefore the church is one. Our calling is one. Our belief is one. And so forth. Isn't this what we find in Ephesians 4, verses 1 to 6? It's all dependent, the anti-pluralism of the Bible is all dependent upon the oneness of God. Because God is one, then truth is one, the way to him is one, and his people are one. Let me read this passage here briefly. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And then here's what he goes on to say. There is one body and one Spirit, even as you are called in one hope of your calling. That means that essentially there's one hope and there's one calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all. Notice how he traces it all back to the oneness, the essence of God. Verse 6, there is one God who is Father of all. As a result, there's one Lord, one Spirit, one church, one salvation, one Bible. Everything is one with God. Pluralism is that other side of the issue. There are many things in pluralism, but at the end of the day, we'll see pluralism is just really one big thing, and it's just the opposite of God. It's the opposite of what God has claimed. So in thinking about the message that we studied together last week and some of the things I said, I just felt I wanted to come back and say a few more things. That message was rather complete. If you give someone a tape, you can give them last week's message, and I'm sure that will be sufficient. But there were just a few more things I wanted to come back and say that I didn't spend enough time on. I didn't feel last week. So let me start with some characteristics of modern-day pluralism. Some characteristics of modern-day pluralism. I want to give you enough food for thought, first of all, to convince yourself in this whole area, and then to give you ammunition in your witnessing and talking with others. This is a dominant spirit you'll run into. I think you can kind of overthrow hedonism fairly easily, and people kind of already suspect that to indulge too much is sin, but pluralism, hardly anyone suspects that's a sin. They think it's a privilege and an American right, and, well, more than that, a God-given blessing. That we are all individuals, we are all human beings, and we may have our own individual beliefs. So the first characteristic I would say is that pluralism is like an insane refusal to say no to conflicting opinions. And I'll make some comments briefly about each one of these as we go along. Pluralism is the insane refusal to say no to conflicting opinions. And I use that word insane with purpose. It is the insane refusal to say no to conflicting opinions. Yesterday I was going through some old letters of mine again, reading some past letters. What I was really doing was getting some address changes ready for our new home, and I came across one older acquaintance of ours. I didn't do really that many changes for friends, but businesses, publications, things like that. But I came across a letter of an old friend. It wasn't that old of a letter, just a year or so ago. And she made this statement. I was just reading her letter to me again. We, at one time, were in the one way together. We were of the same mind and the same opinion about religious matters. And they, since that time, have forsaken what I believe is the true and narrow way. And she had this comment. She said, we are committed to maintaining the unity of the Spirit until we all can attain to the unity of the faith. In other words, what she was saying there was, it's inevitable that we're going to have conflicting opinions today. She recognizes that there is to be a unity of the faith. Ephesians 4 goes on to speak about that, the unity of the faith. The unity of the faith, not the diversity or pluralism or plurality, the unity of the faith. But she said, until we get to that point, what we're endeavoring to do, verse 3 here, what we're committed to do is to endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit. But my response to her was, dear sister, we're committed to the same thing. But for the life of me, I don't know how you can keep the unity of the one Spirit of truth in the midst of heresy and deception and confusion and compromise and things that don't agree with God's Word. How can He be unified over that? You see, what I think they mean, well, I know what they mean. It's this old mushy, false idea, well, let's love each other and overlook our faults and not talk about them, because there's nothing we can do about them right now, and one day God is going to bring us to the unity of the faith. Now, I think a lot of people would be convinced by an argument like that. That sounds good. Let's maintain the unity of the Spirit until we can reach the unity of the faith. Well, you see, I'm not wanting to be bitter or antagonistic with anyone, but I'm not wanting to wait until some who knows when. God didn't say, well, one day it's going to happen. He said, you endeavor to get the unity of the faith right now. And you get the unity of the faith from the unity of the Scriptures. The Scriptures don't teach contrary and conflicting things. They teach one view and one opinion. And I don't know how we're going to get it sometime later if we're not going to get it now. And don't think in your mind that it's going to be some, millennial or some afterlife business, because the context of Ephesians 4:11-15 is in the here and the now. We have been given ministry offices, Ephesians 4:11, you know the passage, in the here and the now. You're not going to have apostles over you in heaven or something. We're given ministry offices. He ascended, and when he ascended, he gave ministry offices. And for these things, verse 12, until this happened, verse 13, we all come in the unity of the faith. Till we all come in the unity of the faith.
Amen.
That's a very clear verse there, into the unity of the faith. And what I'm trying to tell this sister is, you're just putting off something that should be done right now.
Amen.
I can't live just putting it off. I try to tell people, they think that you were born antagonistic or something. And I really wasn't. I tried to go that way on more than one occasion. And I just found it doesn't work. You can't live with yourself with your own conscience. When you think that they're wrong, and you're just going to say, all right, I'm just not going to think about that. I'm not going to address that matter. I'm going to try to overlook that. I believe what they're teaching is heresy. They're not open to me saying anything to them. I'm just going to try to live with them and live together anyway. I've tried that. I shouldn't have, but I've tried that, and it doesn't work. You won't have unity of spirit if you don't have unity of faith.
Amen.
Unity of faith gives us unity of spirit.
Amen.
We have to believe the same thing, then we are united in the Spirit. Really, they're one and the same. Really, they're one and the same. Because the Spirit won't have unity, and He won't give unity when there's heresy in the church. Can you imagine being unified with the JDS heretics? The Spirit won't allow that. He doesn't sanction that. That grieves Him, that people are teaching the heresy they are about Jesus Christ. So you obviously don't have unity of faith there, and obviously, equally so, you simply can't have unity of the Spirit. That sounds really sweet and good and Christian and Christ-like. Well, we're committed to keeping the unity of the Spirit until we reach the unity of faith. But what I found out is these people are not even open right now to unifying themselves in the faith. They're not even open to that. It's like they're trying to keep something for some, out in the future, off in the distant future, pie in the sky type thing that was just going to happen someday. It won't. We have ministry offices. We have to strive till we all come into the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God. You'll have people say, well, I'm not on your level. That's fine. But you can't use that as an excuse to never come on our level.
Amen.
Your very admission, I'm not on your level, should be the pathway to growth in. That should be the pathway to growth. I'm not on your level. Teach me so I can be on your level.
Amen.
I find what those people mean by that, I'm not on your level, is don't teach me. You come down on my level and we'll both be dumb in eternity together. That's not either wise or scriptural. To the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a perfect or mature man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. I'm all in agreement with keeping whatever unity of spirit is biblical. But I, for the life of me, can't do that with good conscience with people who refuse to even discuss disagreements. What they want to do is they say, let's major on the things we agree about. Well, I see that halfway. That's half good. Let's major on the things we agree about. But if we don't talk about the things we disagree about, we'll never change our opinion then.
Right.
We'll both stay in the same boat. Why should that be such a hard thing? It just has to be a spirit of delusion and deception in people, keeping them away from discussing truth with someone who has truth for fear of the Spirit thinks, for fear the person's going to get their eyes open. Because what harm could it do to just sit down and discuss something? I've tried with many of our past friends and acquaintances when we parted ways over something, let's just talk about the matter and see what the Scriptures say. And inevitably, no, we don't even want to talk about that. We know that your mind is made up, and I guess they mean that their mind is made up, but we can't both have our minds made up with conflicting opinions over something that only has one answer. So it's a rather insane refusal to say no, not to say no to conflicting opinions. I would depict it like this. Have you ever, just think of this situation in your own life, gone to someone and asked their opinion, what should you do? And so they tell you what they think you should do. Yeah, that sounds okay to you, or partially okay, mostly okay, not that much okay, or whatever, and so you go to someone else and they give you another opinion. And the more you talk to those two people, they have two opinions. Now maybe it doesn't concern truth, it's just what you should do in your life. But the more you listen to conflicting opinions, you turn to the left and hear them, and you turn to the right and hear them, back to the left to hear them, back to the right, back to the left, back to the right, even if it's a non-essential, non-consequential area, back to the left, back to the right, left, right, left, right, left, right. You know what that does? It produces confusion in your life now. The more you listen to conflicting opinions, if you listen to and you allow conflicting, you don't say no. You see, that's what you have to say as a biblical Christian, no to conflicting opinions about eternal matters. If you don't say that about just non-essential matters of what you should do that day, and you see what confusion that produces, think what it's going to do over religious matters then. If you don't say no to conflicting opinions, just no, I'm not going to listen to both of them the rest of my life. It's driving me up the wall. That's why I say, with purpose, this is an insane refusal. A refusal. And it's insane whenever you refuse to do it. An insane refusal to say no to conflicting opinions. All right, secondly, another characteristic of pluralism. Pluralism really is a revolt against authority. It's a revolt against authority. And any revolt against any authority, you can know that you're in the devil's camp then. That's what started the whole problem of sin in the world, friends, is revolt against God's authority. First the angels in heaven, then Adam and Eve. And everything, nature included, right down through history, has been a revolt against authority. A revolt against the God-ordained pattern or order that we find in the universe. You can go back to mathematics and geometry up here on the board. You revolt against that, and you're inviting upon yourself confusion and deception. A revolt against authority. In other words, what I mean here with pluralism tells us we can all have our own beliefs. So what that tells us is we can all be our own authorities. You know, that tickles the human spine. To think, I don't have to listen to what someone else has to say. I'm a human being. I got a mind of my own, don't I? I can just make up my own mind. Well, in a sense that's true, but you can't make it up contrary to God's word, though. He won't allow that. But why should we want to revolt against authority if authority has been established by God? And if and when authority teaches us the truth, there should be no problem with submitting to that. But people don't want to submit to that. They want to say pluralism. Pluralism is the name of the game today. That's my game for today. That's where I want to go in life. Pluralism. The right to believe whatever I want to believe. And equally, leave that right up to everyone else. As we saw last week, that doesn't work, though. Pluralism is a self-contradiction. Someone has to follow someone. Basically, all of us have to follow the truth. We can't have all of our own opinions, because one of our opinions might be that you can't have an opinion of your own. So you see, you're in a dead-end alley. Pluralism is self-defeating. It's a contradiction of terms. For you to have your opinion and me to have mine, if my opinion is you can't have yours. And if yours is I can't have mine. But mine is that I can have mine, but you can't have yours. And yours is you can have yours, but I can't have mine. Well, wait a minute. Pluralism says we're all entitled. But, you know, that's like saying you're entitled. I'll tell you what it's like. That's saying you're entitled to lifting the globe on your shoulders. It's nice just to sit around and use those words. It's an impossibility, though. We can say we're all entitled to lift the globe. We might be entitled to it, but it'll never happen. It's impossible. No one's ever done it. Entitled? I mean, that's how just completely stupid and insane it is to say that everyone is entitled to their own opinion. You're as entitled to your own opinion as you're entitled to lift the globe. What I mean by that example is it's an impossibility. It simply can't take place. I remember calling a minister, a former pastor of mine, as a matter of fact. This has been some years ago on the telephone. We lived back in one of our homes in Minnesota. Because I had heard, he had sent to me, he and his wife, a newly formed ministry, some of the publications of what they were doing and all about. Now, I had been a part of their church in an earlier day and had seen some of the things they did, and things went from good to bad and then from bad to worse in that church, going back to all the old ways, learning the nation's laws and learning after the abominations of the heathen and Jeremiah 10 and all this business, and just really going against what the Lord by His Spirit had graciously given those people and taught those people. So their church folded, and so they went out into another place and started another church, and that lasted for a couple of months, and that church folded, and they went off and thought, they had this brilliant notion, well, God doesn't want us to pastor anymore, He wants us to evangelize. So what we're going to do is buy a motor home, and they sent us a letter telling how much they owed on it so we could be sure to contribute. They had never done anything like that before. This was like a $35,000 motor home, and they said, we put $500 down on it today. I thought, $500? In other words, you're asking for the full price, essentially is what you're asking for. And we've still got, $34,500, and we're believing that we'll have it by next Friday. Well, of course they didn't. I mean, they lost, I guess, $500. Hopefully they did. And so that didn't work, this going around in evangelism, and so we're going to do this. And then that didn't work, and so we're going to do this. And then finally, we're going to be like Priscilla and Aquila in the Bible. I mean, that'd be like me. Could you imagine me coming and telling my wife and myself, we're going to quit the church, and we're going to be like Priscilla and Aquila. I mean, it was like that difference between daylight and darkness. You would have never imagined them doing something like that. Well, slightly so. She led the singing and kind of preached a little bit in the singing sometimes before her husband came up and ministered. So she already had that preaching bug in her, but she was just going to take over everything. He ordained her into the ministry. He ordained his wife into the ministry, co-pastor, co-evangelist, and they were going to go around starting revival fires all over the nation, traveling in their motorhome. Well, they never got the motorhome, and they never got off the ground, and all these things were happening, and so I just picked up the phone one night to give them a call. I was going to kind of be a Job's friend to them and suggest, well, perhaps all your problems are due to the fact, this wasn't true with Job, but it was with them, that you're out of God's will. Now I'm just going to meekly suggest that to them. Perhaps the reason all your churches have failed and you lost your money, you don't have a motorhome, and you're living out of the backyard of someone else's house. They didn't even have a place. They couldn't even afford to rent a place. I mean, this is a grown, mature man with 6 children, a father and a mother and their 6 children, or some of their children were gone, but he's 40, 45 years old, not like an 18-year-old or something. Can you imagine? You can't even pay your bills, kicked out. You can't even rent a place. Someone's letting you sleep in a back room. You just have to feel like the filth of the earth when at one time you were a pastor of a church and you were going somewhere anyway. And so I just called to suggest, and I said, I hear that I wasn't at the service. My mother was at the service whenever this happened, though. I said, I hear that you ordained your wife into the ministry. I said, have you never read the scriptures, as Jesus said to the religious leaders? Have you not read, I suffer not a woman to teach? Have you not read, women be silent in your assemblies? Or I changed it around, do ye not remember what you yourself taught? You taught that it was wrong. And why are you doing this now? And, I was, in the process, of course, what he had found out about us is that we had been sent supernaturally, totally against his guidance, by the way. I asked him, I didn't ask him. He asked me to come into his study before we ever left the South. And he wanted to talk with me about my plan, shall we say, my insane, we'll go ahead and use his word, plan to just pack up and move. Do you have any money? Do you know anybody up there? Well, he gave me a battleship's worth of doubt and unbelief that it won't work, and you'll be back home before too long. And what he had found out, though, was we were blessed. Here, I was teaching in a Bible school, and one of his friends was in a Bible school, not teaching, studying. I was already teaching in one. And we had met up at a church, and we're teaching in that church, and had this great group of people together, and all of this, and it had been going on for a long time, and there wasn't any sign of anything failing like theirs, failed every month or so. He had learned about all that, so I was using my experiences. I told him, I said, it's not necessarily a proof that we're right and you're wrong. Just because we have visible results, I said, that's not necessarily a proof. But after all, if it's God's way, God's going to prosper it, though. Amen. And if it isn't, he won't prosper it. Not in the long run, he won't. And it'd be better if he did in the short run. So we can get our eyes open now and do something about it, rather than wait till Judgment Day or something. Well, I gave him all of that. And then I'm trying to get to a point here. We're talking about revolt against authority. You know what his statement to me was? Well, you see, I have to go back a little further here. He had gotten Dr. Freeman's tapes from way back in the early 70s. I mean, one time he let me in his study and let me in his closet where all of his tapes were, And I mean, they were the original tapes because it was the old form of cassette tapes. And I knew that, I didn't have any like that. He had been in it so long, he had the original old, it's a certain type of cassette tape that you can hardly even find anymore. And certainly Freeman wasn't using that type of cassette anymore. So he had been raised, he had grown up on Freeman's teaching about faith and healing and the New Testament church and everything. He had grown up on all that long before I was ever even saved, let alone baptized in the Spirit or introduced to Dr. Freeman's ministry there at Faith Assembly. And you see, the problem was he had given all of that up. Or he would think the problem was I hadn't given it up. That was the problem from his perspective. I was still with it all. I still believed all the essential basic things that I was taught. I still held to the same things. So his response to me on the phone, it was a cutting response. He said, this was in the year right after Dr. Freeman had had a severe heart attack there right during a service and had preached his way right through that heart attack. I'm not getting into all of that. I'm just getting into his position of revolt against authority. He said, well, because he could tell I'm trying to bring him back to the fold. And it's kind of like the tables have been turned. The disciple is discipling the teacher now, trying to bring the pastor back into the fold from his wayward ways here. He said, well, I hear what happened to your daddy. And I thought, Daddy, and then I knew instantly what he was talking about because Dr. Freeman had just had a heart attack. Why would he call him Daddy like that? That's a negative, pejorative remark there. Like, you just follow your daddy. He said, I hear what happened to your daddy. And I said, wait just a minute. He was your daddy for all these years. What are you now, an illegitimate child? He was your daddy for all these years. But that was meant to be a low blow against me. Well, I hear what happened to your daddy. In other words, he was saying, you can't point to all the failures in my ministry and say that I must be out of God's will, or you'd have to be pointing to Dr. Freeman's heart attack and say that Dr. Freeman is out of God's will. And I didn't want to get into all of that. I felt Dr. Freeman was a lot more in God's will. Regardless of what was going on there, he was a lot more in God's will than this man I was talking to on the telephone. But he was a revolt against authority. He had totally cut himself off, and so referred to instead of Brother Freeman or Dr. Freeman or my former teacher or such and such, and I wasn't on Freeman's automatic list or listening to him or anything. But instead of any of those designations, it was your daddy. And it just stood out to me. And this was not this man was for the most part a gentle person. He was not a cutting person. He just didn't have a cutting personality. But boy, he did on the phone that night. And then he gave me a lecture. He said, who do you think you are? You're the disciple trying to lecture me. He said, I don't want to have any of this. And so he hung up on me. And that was my former pastor. And I remember the case whenever that happened of John 9. Who are you, the religious leader said to that man born blind healed, to teach us? And they cast him out of the synagogue. A third characteristic of pluralism is, and this is kind of the reverse side of number 2, is a superficial refusal to be like others. A superficial refusal to be like others. You see, if you follow authority, then somebody's going to be like somebody else. And I think it's an old individualistic spirit that's in the world, in America anyway today, where people want to, as they say, do their own thing. I want to be my own man. I want to do my own thing. I don't want to be like anybody else. Well, that's just what pluralism is all about. You get to have your own unique notions and ideas. You're different than everybody else in the world with your ideas and notions. But notice I started that statement with the word superficial. Because really, at the end of the day, if you're a pluralist, you end up just being like all the other pluralists. It's a desire to be different and not like everybody else. But as I said last week, you're just going to adopt some tick or ism that someone else has believed, either somewhere in the world today or somewhere in past history. You're not going to be able to, you don't have the ability to think up anything new. You don't even have that ability. You're going to come across, the devil's going to offer you on a silver platter some deception that 14 million people have been offered and swallowed it hook, line, and sinker somewhere in the past. And after all, really, here's where you end up. What they're thinking is pluralism, it's like this. Every man gets to have his own opinion, and so we can all be different. And we don't want to be just like this one positive way over here, just the one way. Every man wants to have his own opinion. But you see, what you end up is just being one big group of people who believe in pluralism. Any different than anyone else? No. The more you believe in pluralism, the more you're like everyone else in the world. You see, the thing you're after is the thing you'll never get that way. If you want to be unique and different, let me tell you the way to go about doing that. Believe the Word of God.
Amen.
Don't believe in pluralism. If you want to be different, just stand for the Word of God, and you'll be as different as they come.
Amen.
The people who want to be different are not the pluralists over here. They're the unified people over here who believe one faith, one God, one Lord, one baptism. Now, it sounds like that should be just normal church doctrine. If we believe that, everyone would be the same. Well, it is normal, but people don't believe Ephesians 4, though. They know that it says 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, but as they put their old denominational glasses on, to them it says many, 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 many. There are many gods, many ways, many lords, many spirits, many baptisms, many church orders. They just see many, many, many. And the Bible says 1, 1, 1. They see many, many, many. But really you end up at the same place, 1, 1, 1. But it's not one on God's side. It's one over there with pluralism. You know, in the study of religion, for instance, I remember one book that came out back in the early 1900s, and I think he was right, because what he was trying to set forth, it was just maybe, well, it was setting forth what other people had set forth, but from a new angle or with a new twist to it. What he was arguing was this, that there's not Christianity, one religion, than many other religions. There is Christianity, one religion, and there is whatever is not Christianity, which is its opposite. And it might be Zen Buddhism, it might be atheism, it might be anything, but all that is one religion, and it comes into the word false. And I thought that was a good way to say it, that there really aren't many other religions in the world. We're just speaking from a certain perspective whenever we talk about the many religions. There's only two religions. There's God's religion and the devil's religion. There's only those two. And the first one is the religion of truth, and the second one is the religion of falsehood and deception. Now, it may be a JDS falsehood, it may be Hindu falsehood, it may be Islamic falsehood, but at the end of the day, it's falsehood, though. It doesn't matter what name tag or when it was founded or who founded it or where its stronghold or where its holy center is. At the end of the day, it's opposed to Christianity. There are only two religions. And I think that's right, that at the end of the day, because there are two powerful forces, there's a kingdom of light and kingdom of darkness, and there's no middle ground there, that really there aren't various heres and various theirs. There are twos of everything. There's the truth about any question, then there are many, 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 many opinions about it, but all of them could be fit under the head of deception, or being a lie, or being false. So this is kind of like an old child's comfort blanket to say, well, I want to be like myself and not like anyone else. That's kind of a hazy way of looking at pluralism, because pluralism makes you like everyone else around you. And then here's something I want to major on this morning, point 4, a fourth characteristic of pluralism, increasingly seen today, and that is a rabid, real reluctance to judge or criticize others. But again, this is only relatively true. A real reluctance to judge or criticize. Now, if you're understanding what I'm saying about pluralism, you'll see that that's a natural offshoot of pluralism. What does pluralism say? We're all entitled to our own opinion, all right? If we're all entitled to it, then a natural offshoot of that is you should not criticize or judge anyone. Because all you'd be doing is judging them on the basis of what you want or what you think or what you believe, and that's not fair, because pluralism's doctrine is he's entitled to his own beliefs and opinion. So it's a natural byproduct of pluralism, is a reluctance to judge or criticize. Now, we know how much the Scriptures have to say about discerning true and false ministries and discerning error from truth and discerning heresies and discerning false prophets. You see, if we already know that, that's already a given to us here in this church, if we already know that, since its opposite is just a byproduct of pluralism, then that means pluralism is denied by Scripture. We've gone about it through a backdoor way here in saying what I've just said. Since we know what the Scriptures say about judging and criticizing, in the biblical sense, it does not say that we should be reluctant. It says that we should do it, that we should judge righteously, that we should discern faithfully. Malachi 3 happens to talk about that. So will you learn to discern between those that love God and those that do not love God. Malachi 3. Then, as you can see, pluralism would have to be denied. If its offshoot or its byproduct is denied, then it is denied itself. Now, I've gone on record over the years, back from when I first met all of you, to say this, and I just want to say it again, just so you'll remember it again. The most often quoted verse, in my opinion, in all of the Bible is Matthew 7 and verse 1. That's the most often quoted verse. Some of you are smiling because someone quoted that to you last week or yesterday or something. You can have a swine of a heathen who knows that verse. I mean a swine of a heathen who knows Matthew 7:1. And it goes like this: judge not, lest you be judged. Judge not, lest you be judged. Oh, I could just say it until the sun comes up and goes down and comes up again. Judge not, lest you be judged. Judge not, lest you be judged. That is, in my opinion, the most often quoted verse in the Bible today. I don't think it's true in past days. It's true today, and it's true because of pluralism. Everybody will quote you this verse. The first remark that's critical or that's judgmental or that's not just whoopee in agreement with them, the first remark thing here: judge not lest you be judged. Judge not lest you be judged. We did something with some neighbors of ours here a few weeks ago. I told my wife, I don't want the children over here. I don't want my children over there. Those are heathens. They're pagans. And my wife went over there and told them that. See how much bravery I have? I sent her over there to tell them. I wasn't there that day. Hey, they threatened, the husband threatened my wife and cursed and bashed our front door in, and the wife is threatened, and both of them have threatened, when your husband comes home tonight, we're going to blah, 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 blah. And I come home every night and look over there, and they know that I'm home, and nobody ever comes over. There's who's afraid right there. They never come over to say anything, but they threaten during the day. Your husband, blah, 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 blah. He comes home, I'm going to tell blah, 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 blah. He drives that blue Datsun. When I see that blue Datsun drive up, blah, 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 blah. They never come over at all. They never been, but they give her a hard time, so I just sick her on to them. And she went over and told them what I said, well, what she says, what the Word says. I mean, they got a little boy, they smoke over there, and they're not bad people in the sense of just, bad, but they're bad, they're lost. And I don't want my children around people that smoke, especially around people who say they're Christians. I mean, if you ask, well, we're Christian, well, who, blah, 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 there they go again, you're a Christian, we're a Christian, we're all Christians, pluralism, But they're smoking Christians up. All right, you can be a smoking one if you want to, but I don't want my children to think that you can be both at the same time. They're going to grow up being influenced by that. And they got a little boy who comes over and all the time says, by God, and he drops something, by God, and it rains, by God, and he's happy, by God. Every phrase of his is, by God. His parents, he must have learned that from his parents. He's just a little tot. He can barely get, watermelon, that whole phrase out of his mouth. But he can say, by God, zippity quick, though. By God, by God. And my children come home saying, Jeremy's saying, by God again. And I said, that's wrong for him to say that. So I just said, I don't want your children in our yard. We won't bother you. You won't bother us. And my wife went over there and told that. And her mother was visiting her. And she came out the front door. Judge not, lest you be judged. First thing she said. And I just would like to hit someone. You fat pagan, you heathen. You never been to church a day in your life. That's unfair for you to know a Bible verse to use against me. You've never been in church a day in your life. Where'd you learn that verse? The devil must be teaching Bible verses to people. They've never been in church. I know they haven't been in church, but they know that verse. Judge not, lest you be judged. Probably they couldn't find it. Sometimes I tell them that. Now, you show me where that is in the Bible. I'll believe you that. I know. Well, I don't know, but it's there. Well, I won't believe you till it's there. They couldn't find it. They'd be looking everywhere to find that verse. But, if they could find it, what I tell them is, wait a minute. If that's true, why are you violating it then? You're saying to me, judge not. Then you're saying I'm judging. How would you know I'm judging, but you judged me? You got to remember these tricks of the trade, friends. You can always reverse things on people. You can be sure of this. If it's a deception, it won't have any consistency to it. It'll always be self-contradictory. Judge not, lest you be judged. I had a relative one time who sent me, this was a low blow. It was all it had in the letter. Big full-page letter with one sentence in it. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Love such and such. Love such and such. So I fired a letter back and said, that's really interesting that you could say that, and how would you know I'm judging you? In other words, you had to make some moral discernment. You had to make some rational charge against me. You had to categorize me as some type of person. You had to categorize my statements against you in some category. Where did you put them? You put them in a judgmental category. Well, how did you do that? How were you able to do that? If you didn't practice some discernment and judging on your own. Self-contradictory. Judge not lest you be judged. That's Matthew 7:1. Of course, what Jesus is talking about is unfair criticism there. That's what he's talking about. He's not saying don't point out when someone's wrong. The whole scriptures contradict that. They say that we are to point out when someone's wrong. And I just want to give you a passage we don't look at a whole lot around here, but it's very clear. Hebrews 5. Hebrews 5, verses 12, 13, and 14. Hebrews 5, verses 12, 13, and 14. I really truly believe that Matthew 7:1 is the most quoted verse of all the Bible. Judge not, lest you be judged. Real reluctance, we're saying, to judge or to criticize. But I said after I said that a moment ago that it's in a relative sense. They won't judge anybody except someone who doesn't believe in pluralism. And I found that unique. Yeah, I think I've told you that story along this line before. I was in a place, that's where I taught in a Bible school one time, where they just stood for love, love, love. They loved everybody. Yeah. Except anyone who taught that you shouldn't love everybody. Yeah. They would love anybody. They would be friends and friendly to anyone. And I just find it, why is it that they're opposed to this certain type of person? It must be because they have the truth. So they're not opposed to other people. They would mix and mingle and chit and chatter with this, that, and the other. God says walk in love, and hereby we know that we're born again if we love God and love our fellow man and all this, and that's fine. That's scriptural. That's 1 John 4. But then when you find someone who tries to shoot holes in that theory, that just kind of blanket theory, that old hazy, syrupy, sweet theory of let's love everyone, you find someone who tries to shoot holes in that, and you'll find someone who doesn't practice their love theory very well. I was thrown out on my ear. And they taught we're supposed to love everyone. And if we differ with our brother, the whole problem was they thought that if I was differing with them, I should love them anyway. Well, then practice what you preach. They threw me out. They didn't love me. They threw me out, took me off their mailing list, and I haven't talked to, that particular person since then in all these years. And I got taken off of someone else's mailing list recently, and I'm having the right to try to get back on it. Same type of person. Religious, pluralistic type individual. They just can't seem to think. They teach love, but if you teach contrary to that, I don't believe in love anymore. They teach you shouldn't criticize. If you teach contrary to that, they don't teach that anymore. I believe you should criticize. And they'll criticize the one who's teaching that you should. At least they're practicing our doctrine. We finally won them to our side. But the only time they'll practice that is whenever they're using it against us, not against anybody else. Hebrews 5:12. For when for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. For every one that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. Now look at verse 14. But strong meat belongeth unto them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. What are you going to do with that compound verse right there? Those of full age, here's how they're described. Those who by reason of use, you've done it, you've used it, you've practiced it. What have you used? Your senses, your moral awareness, your ability to judge and discern and, quote, criticize, unquote, in the right sense. You have used it. You've exercised yourself in that area. If you don't exercise in a certain area, you're not strong. You're weak in that area. When you exercise, you gain more ability and more confidence in that area. Those who by reason of use have their senses. Now, he's not meaning your five senses, because how could you discern good and evil? Now, you can discern good and bad, maybe, bad taste with taste buds, but good and evil with five senses, you couldn't discern good and evil. with 5 senses. There's some other senses he's talked about here. Spiritual sense of discernment and judgment. To discern both good and evil.
Hallelujah.
See, what I haven't had the opportunity yet to try to convince my neighbors. They haven't been over to fulfill their threats yet. But what I would try to convince them of, I would ask them, ask them baited questions. That's the way you should do. Do you believe that every man's entitled to his own opinion? Because you know what they'll say. They even told you that. But we believe everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Don't you push your religion on us. Well, what I would try to tell them is your lack of religion is your attempt to push it on us. And do you believe every man's entitled to his own opinion? All right, here's my opinion then. Are you going to entitle me to it? Are you going to let me have it? My opinion is you must be in church Sunday morning. Now, that's my opinion. You must be there Wednesday night. You must serve the Lord. You must stop smoking. You must stop swearing. You must stop using drugs. You must clean your life up. Well, blah, blah, blah. No, if I'm entitled, if we can't do something about what I'm entitled to, then it's just a name for nothing. Amen. We're just spouting off the language to say you're entitled to it, but I'm not going to do anything. You can wish that I would or think, well, then I'm not entitled to anything. Opinions are just opinions. Don't we mean that we're entitled to something to the point of doing it or living it or experiencing it or obeying it? Surely that's what they mean whenever they say that. But yet whenever you try to receive that ability or privilege from them, and you're denied that just immediately.
Amen.
Oh, she said to my wife one day, oh, it's unfair for our child not to be able to come over in your yard. And I didn't get to talk to her. That was the night she said, when he comes home, I'm coming over to talk. I was going to tell her, the only thing that's unfair in this universe is that you have chosen not to believe in the name of the only begotten Son of God.
Amen.
That's what's unfair. And what's even more unfair than that is you have refused the opportunity of your child to believe in the name of the only begotten Son of God. That's what's unfair. Whether he gets to come in my yard, that's not a question of fairness or unfairness. But a question of fairness is, what are you doing for your child's eternal security? And what are you doing for your own? I have to bring you a report. It's a rather sad one. But last Sunday, just after I finished preaching this message, I had an appointment to counsel a couple of people who had driven all the way from New Jersey to ask some questions and from what they led me to believe on the phone, to receive some answers and to get some truth. And, I just preached that message. I told someone later, hey, they got me on the wrong day. I just went into third gear by that time, I told you last week that we already had 3 sermons, that you preached one and I preached 2. Well, I got my third one in later that afternoon.
Hallelujah.
Didn't intend for it to be that way. I was led to believe on the phone that it was going to be a friendly, peaceable conversation. And so they knocked on the door after church. I had to get down there and meet them in my study, and they came in, and I was friendly, and they were friendly, kind of, a little suspicious, and that's okay. I'd never met him, had never seen me in my life, and I'd never seen him before, but he knew of me. And so he commented on the books and said, wow, look at all the books in here. He said, this is more books in theology than the New York Public Library has. And I said, well, thanks for the compliment, but I doubt that's true. I doubted that was true. I assume they have more books than I have. But he was trying to get off on a good foot, I guess. We sat down and we started to talk, and he said, well, I think we ought to pray before we talk. Well, I'm all in favor of praying, but sometimes I'm kind of a little suspicious. I know it's going to be some little rinky-dink prayer, and then they're going to disobey what they prayed about. And so we bowed our heads, and, oh, God in heaven, our Father, teach us your word, take all bitterness out of our heart. We're hungry for the truth, And then the conversation proved that they were not hungry for the truth at all. But after we got through with the prayer, I said, well, what are you here for? What do we need to do? What can I do for you today? How can I make your day go well for you? That was my attitude to them. I was friendly. And so he asked a question. He said, well, here's my question. And I was going to answer it my own way, in a roundabout way of asking some other questions and getting back around to it. And I no sooner started, and this young man just exploded. Stop, wait, you're not answering my question. There you go. You're trying to avoid it. You're trying to get... I said, what are you talking about? We don't even know one another. We just laid eyes on one another. Give me time to answer. No, you're not going to answer the question. You're trying to weasel your way out of it. I said, wait just a minute. I said, I hear and smell an argumentative spirit. I said, you've got a contrary, divisive spirit in you. I said, you're not going to tell me that you have come all this way to argue? I said, surely I gave you to have more intelligence than that. You drove from out of state to argue with someone? I said, don't you realize that's what children do? I said, adults don't argue. I said, I've got a good day ahead of me planned. I said, I don't argue with people. That's for babies. That's for children who fight over toys. I said, so if you want to argue, I think we need to stop now, and you need to go home. Because I said, you're not going to change my mind. And in your framework, I'm not going to change your mind either. Well, of course, he was just seething. And, people like that, I had him pictured as being a different person than that. But people like that, they think they win at the end of the day if they can get you angry or mad. And whenever the tables get turned on them, it just does a double blow to them, I'm afraid. He was just furious over that. He said, all right, we'll just leave. He got up to leave, and I didn't really want him to. I wanted to tell him some things. I wanted to get to preach the truth to him so they get to hear it. So I figured out some way to get him calmed down to sit down again, and I really preached. And they didn't say anything. Both of them just sat there, and they looked at the floor and just listened. I don't know if the Lord's going to use that word, but it must have been 15 minutes of uninterrupted preaching to them, just sharing with them. I said, here's what it means, brother, to be a Christian. I said, I understand you're newly born in the Lord. I said, you have a lot to learn.
This message will be continued